Sometimes the people who hurt you the most believe they just walked away without ever facing any real consequences. But life has a quiet way of sending its own lessons. And those lessons often show up when no one is looking for them. Maybe you still remember the moment it happened. The moment someone you trusted said something that cut deeper than they ever understood, or made a choice that left your heart holding a silence you never agreed to carry. It probably felt painfully unfair. You gave your time, you gave your patience, you tried to protect a connection that truly mattered to you, but the other person didn't handle it with the same care. Blam. Maybe they ignored how hard you were trying. Maybe they walked away, as if your feelings were simple, easy to replace. Maybe they believed your kindness would always be there no matter how they acted. And when it finally ended, you were the one left holding the questions. Why did they treat me that way? Did anything we shared ever really mean something to them? You know, those questions can stay in your mind for a very long time. Because when someone hurts you deeply, the pain isn't just about what happened. It's also about the fear that they may never truly see the damage they caused. Prad. But here is something many people eventually come to understand. Life doesn't always hand out its lessons right away. Sometimes it waits. It waits until the person who caused the pain finally finds themselves in a moment where they begin to see things with new eyes. And when that realization finally arrives, it can be far more powerful than anything you could have said. MDA life has a strange way of reflecting our actions back to us. The kindness we ignored, the hearts we took for granted. Sooner or later, those choices return as lessons. And sometimes those lessons show up in the most unexpected ways. Jammed one, the lesson that begins with silence, land. The first lesson life often teaches someone who hurt you doesn't come with loud punishment. It starts with something much quieter, your absence. At first, the person who hurt you might not feel anything different. Life goes on for them. Their days keep moving. Conversations with other people begin filling the spaces where you once stood. And for a while, it might look like nothing has really changed for them at all. Deemed. This is the moment that can cut the deepest. Because when someone walks away after hurting you, it can feel like they slipped out of the story without ever facing what they did. You're the one left holding the memories, the words they used, the moments when you tried to explain your feelings, the effort you gave to keep the connection together as everything started falling apart, and still they walked away as though it didn't matter. But life moves with a quiet rhythm. It doesn't hurry to teach its lessons. Instead, it waits. It waits until the person who caused the hurt slowly starts to sense something is missing. Explained. Maybe it happens on a hard day when they instinctively think of reaching out to you, only to remember you're no longer there. Maybe it happens during a talk with someone else, when they notice the understanding you once offered is not so easy to find. Or maybe it appears in a quiet moment late at night when memories drift back without warning. You become a comparison plans. They begin to notice how rare your patience was, how real your care truly felt, how you stood beside them even when things were complicated. And that is when the first lesson quietly begins. Not through revenge, not through rage, but through the realization that the person they once hurt was someone who truly cared. And sometimes that realization becomes the start of a lesson they never expected life to give them. Lines 2. When life quietly reflects their actions back to them, then slowly, bit by bit, life begins to deliver the second lesson. The moment when people start feeling the same emotions they once caused in someone else to leans. At first, it doesn't look like a lesson at all. It just feels like another ordinary moment. Maybe someone treats them with the same carelessness they once showed you. Maybe they pour their time and energy into someone who doesn't value it the way they hoped. And suddenly they find themselves standing in a place that feels strangely familiar. The place you once stood. The place where effort goes unseen. Where kindness feels taken for granted. Where one heart is trying, but the other person isn't really paying attention. At first, they may not connect these two stories, but emotions have a powerful way of telling the truth. Because when someone feels the same type of pain they once caused another person, something inside them shifts land. They begin to understand feelings that once seemed far away. The confusion of trying to explain your heart to someone who isn't truly listening. The quiet disappointment of noticing your effort isn't being valued. The loneliness that comes from caring more deeply than the other person does. And suddenly memories of you begin to rise again. They remember the days when you were patient with them, the times you tried to talk things through instead of walking away. The effort you made to keep the connection alive even when it was hard. Plan. But now those memories carry a different weight because they're no longer just memories. They have turned into a mirror showing them what you must have felt during the moments they failed to really appreciate you. And that's when life's lesson starts to become clear, not through punishment, but through understanding. That sometimes the only way a person truly understands the pain they caused is when life places them in the same position. And when that realization finally appears, it can completely change how they view everything they once took for granted. Plem 3, when regret finally finds them. This is the moment life delivers the deepest lesson of all. The moment when understanding slowly becomes regret. By now, something inside them has already started to change. They've begun to notice things they once ignored. They've started to feel emotions they never thought they would face. Glance. But the real lesson appears when memories of you return, not just as passing pictures, but as strong realizations. Glance. They begin to remember how you used to treat them, the patience you showed during hard conversations, the way you tried to fix things instead of simply walking away, the small efforts you made that they barely noticed at the time. Back then, it all felt normal. Your care seemed like something that would always be there. Your loyalty felt like something they didn't need to protect. But now when they look back, those moments seem completely different because life has shown them something important. People like you are rare. Not everyone offers that level of patience. Not everyone stays when things become complicated. Not everyone gives their heart with that kind of honesty, And that is when regret quietly begins to grow. It doesn't arrive loudly. Instead, it appears during still moments when they start thinking about what happened between you. Maybe they replay certain conversations in their mind. Moments when you were trying to share your feelings and they chose not to listen. Times when you needed understanding, but they met you with distance instead. Little by little, they begin to realize something painful. Blend. You weren't asking for too much. You were simply asked to be treated with the same care you were giving. And once a person understands that truth, it becomes impossible to unsee because they can now clearly notice the connection. The person who once stood beside them with real care is no longer there. Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally chose peace over staying in a place where your heart wasn't valued. And that realization becomes one of life's strongest lessons. Sometimes we don't see the value of someone until the moment we know we may never get that chance again. Gem 4, when they finally think about reaching out. Sooner or later, the lesson reaches a point they can no longer escape. The moment they begin thinking about you again, by now enough time has passed for them to see things more clearly. Life has slowed them down in ways they never expected. The distractions that once kept their mind busy don't work the way they used to. Quiet moments begin to show up more often. And in those moments, certain thoughts start to return. Your name, your voice, the way you once showed up for them without needing to be asked planned. They begin to wonder whether you're happy now, whether you found people who truly value the kindness they once ignored, and then a simple idea appears in their mind. Maybe I should reach out. Blamed. At first, it feels like an easy step, just a message, just a simple, how have you been? But the longer they think about it, the heavier that step begins to feel. Because reaching out means facing the truth. It means admitting they didn't treat you the the way they should have. It means accepting that the person they once hurt might not be standing in the same place anymore, blamed. And that thought creates a quiet fear. What if you've already moved on emotionally? What if the patience you once had for them is gone now? What if the door they believed would always stay open has gently closed? Bling. This is the moment life's lesson becomes real, because they start to understand something they never really thought about before. The person who once fought to keep the connection alive is no longer chasing the same story. Means you're not trying to prove your worth anymore. You've learned something powerful from the pain they caused. Your peace matters more than holding on to someone who failed to see your value. And when someone finally understands that truth, they begin to see you differently. Not as the person who stayed, but as the person strong enough to walk away. Bands 5, the lesson life always delivers. In the end, life teaches a lesson many people only grasp after it's too late. Bland. When someone hurts you, it can feel as though the story ended in the wrong way. They stepped out of the situation while you were left holding the emotions. They kept living their life while you were trying to heal from something that meant everything to you. Lands for a long time, it may seem like they slipped away from the weight of their actions, but life moves quietly. It waits until time passes, until the noise of everyday life softens, until the person who caused the hurt finally finds a moment to look back at what truly happened. No. And when that moment shows up, the truth becomes clearer than it ever was before. Land, they begin to understand something they couldn't see while you were still standing next to them. You were never asking for perfection. You were simply asking to be valued. You wanted honesty. You wanted respect. You wanted a connection where your effort was met with the same level of care. Blend. But instead of seeing that while they still had the chance, they let your presence slowly fade out of their life. Bland. That is the strange way life teaches its lessons. Not through revenge, not through rage. B. Ute through realization. Climb the realization that the person they once hurt was someone who honestly cared, someone who was willing to stay and build something real. Blind. But life also gives another lesson, one that belongs to you. Blands. Because when someone hurts you deeply, you learn something about your own worth. You learn that your kindness is not something to be used lightly. You learn that your heart deserves to be treated with care. You know, and most importantly, you learn that walking away from the wrong situation is not weakness. It is strength. Blends, because the right people will never need life to show them your value. They will recognize it while you are still there, lined. So if you've ever been hurt by someone who failed to appreciate what you gave them, remember this. Life always has a way of balancing things. The lessons we try to escape eventually reach us. And the people who once ignored your worth may one day finally see exactly what they lost. Blends. But by then, you may already be living a life where your peace matters more than their late understanding. And if this story spoke to something inside you, take a moment to think about your own path. Sometimes the pain we go through becomes the very lesson that leads us toward a stronger and wiser version of ourselves. Blend. If this message connected with you, like this video, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who might need this reminder today.